welcome to this episode of Herald Cafe. Today, as our guest, we've got a writer. He's from Scotland, but he's a Goa veteran. And when I was talking to him the other day, he said he came to Candlelim when the roads were not even tarred and cows were moving freely. Here he is, Mr. David Macdonald.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've been coming to Goa, staying in Candlelim for 20 years almost. I used to live in Pakistan. I was working for the United Nations in Afghanistan. So we used to travel down here with our kids at Christmas and enjoyed it. And so now we come back for 2 or 3 months every winter to actually escape the Scottish winter.
Yes, I was like, what winter in Goa?
What winter in Goa? Well, it's always interesting because in Goa, when we come in January, for us, it's very hot. But you see guys riding a scooter or a motorbike and they've got a big hoodie on and they've got a scarf around here and they're obviously feeling the cold. But of course we don't feel the cold. We'll feel the cold when we go back to Scotland for the summer, which will actually maybe be a bit more like the winter for us.
Okay, David, let me congratulate you on your second book called Elvis in Kabul.
Elvis in Kabul.
And great that there's a book launch here in Carpe Diem Majorda. Are you planning any more book launches in Goa?
No, because we're leaving at the end of this week to go back to the UK. I might do another one when I come back next January, because of course if you've written a book, if you've written music, then some of it never goes out of date. Doesn't matter. The issue's still the same, you know. So, but not there was another. Not a launch. It's not a launch. We did the launch in Scotland when the book came out in 2021, but it's more of a reading. So you're reading excerpts from the book, basically to try and entice people to buy it. Of course.
Talking about buying, where can we buy the book?
Well, the book is certainly available on Amazon, which tends to be a bit more expensive because you're getting the international version.
Right.
But the publisher now has arranged for distribution in India through a print-on-demand system.
Okay.
So if you go into a good bookshop and order it, they should be able to get you a copy within a week or 2 weeks.
Any bookstore here in Goa?
Well, I said a good bookshop. So I'll let you decide for yourself what a good bookshop is.
Yes.
I don't know enough about bookshops, and usually a good independent bookshop would be the way to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So, David, please tell us more about the book, Elvis in Kabul.
The book, Elvis in Kabul. Well, I had written another book about Afghanistan and drugs, called Drugs in Afghanistan, Opium, Outlaws and Scorpion Tales. And then I thought, well, maybe I should write a more popular, not exactly a version of it, but to include some of the issues round about drugs, round about corruption, round about politics in that second book, in a novel. And it wasn't easy writing a novel. Anybody out there who's wanting to write a novel, it ain't easy, but certainly worthwhile. Take you a while. Took me, I think, overall about 6 years to write this novel. I'm not a full-time writer, so I was just writing a bit at a time. But it's basically about the alternative name for it, title was A Killing in Kabul.
Okay.
So it's about somebody who's been killed, and of course, why would you concentrate or focus on one killing in Kabul when there's many killings in Kabul? So it was about this one killing of a UN driver, and then the hero of the story, Gilman Creef, who's obviously Scottish.
Right. How can you miss your brothers?
Pardon?
How can you miss your brothers?
Yeah, absolutely. So he tries to solve the murder, basically. So he's going through Kabul, trying to investigate the murder, but it's a very difficult place and situation to investigate anything, especially if you're a foreigner, because the police, such as they are at that point, weren't really interested in solving the murder. It's just another murder. So they were more intent on looking at other forms of criminal behaviour. So that's basically what the book's about. And then Elvis jumps into it.
How?
So Elvis, good question. So Elvis jumps into it because Elvis is I'll tell you how I found Elvis. I was having a problem writing the book, and it wasn't quite going the way I wanted. There was one bit going this way, another bit going that way. So I thought, how am I going to reconcile this? And one day I was sitting in my car, and in our car from the windscreen was hanging a small plastic doll of Elvis.
Right.
All geared up for a Las Vegas performance, you know, with a rhinestone suit on, etc. So this little doll had come free with a sound system that I bought in a store, in an electronic store in Glasgow in Scotland. So when I got it, and I always liked Elvis, like his music, so I hung it from the windscreen. So it was when that little doll, I was looking at a little doll and I thought, yeah, that's the key. But I'm not going to tell you what that key is.
Right.
I'm not going to turn the key for you.
Got it.
Because then you'll know the story.
Okay, and your extensive years in all over Asia, mostly Uzbekistan. Also.
Not Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and then down in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Myanmar.
Yeah.
So these countries were where I worked mostly.
And your area of expertise was to drug reduction, harm reduction.
It was
policies?
it's what's known as drug demand reduction.
Okay.
There's drug supply reduction.
Okay.
So the narcotic police here are engaged in that. They're trying to stop the supply.
Right.
Or do something about the supply, but in demand reduction, we're trying to do something about the demand. So we're helping people who have problems with drugs, treatment, rehabilitation, harm reduction as well, to reduce the harms associated with drug use, a whole range of different forms of drug use, because a lot of people don't understand the risks of using drugs or using them in particular ways. So harm reduction is about helping them basically to stay alive until they're either able or they decide they want to come off drugs. Because if somebody doesn't want to come off drugs, there's no point in giving them treatment, because they won't stay. If they're clean, if they go through detox, if they go through a treatment program, they'll eventually go back to drugs. So relapse prevention is a big area of drug treatment and rehabilitation.
And community awareness programs will also be included in this, you know?
Absolutely, because the problem also often emanates from the community. You know, a community...
Give me an example, please.
Well, a community where there are, say, several known young people or older people who are using drugs, who maybe, if they're injecting a drug like heroin, then they're discarding the needles. Young kids can pick those needles up, stab themselves, get HIV or hepatitis or something else. So it's about reducing harm, not just for the individual, but for the family and for the community as well. So that's, I mean, that is one example. There have been many cases in different countries of a community saying, well, you know, enough is enough, we want something done about this. And quite often the community wants young people to stop using drugs. But that's easier said than done. It's not an easy thing to do, just to get people to stop using drugs. So that's why there are needle and syringe distribution programs, or rather exchange programs, where you give the injecting drug user a clean set of needles and syringes, and then they return it to you and get another set. So it's a bit more involved than that, but that's the basics of it.
It's a complex thing, because you cannot cure it, but you can assist it not to get more harm. You know?
You can absolutely assist it. So it's about basically damage limitation.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people get damaged with people using psychoactive drugs, and I'm including alcohol in that, because we quite often forget that alcohol is a very strong psychoactive substance, except it's legal and it's socially acceptable. But I think you only need to speak to police on the streets, community police or healthcare workers, and they'll tell you the main drug that they have problems with is alcohol. You know, in terms of road traffic accidents, in terms of domestic abuse, a whole range of issues in terms of aggression, etc. So yeah, we shouldn't forget, especially in Goa, which is awash with alcohol, that alcohol is a psychoactive substance, absolutely.
So with your experience in Afghanistan and all these places where you were working closely with narcotics and reduction policies issues and executing those programs, do you see the remedial measures of Goa government is up to the mark, and do you see anywhere in the community about talking about, like how you say, alcohol, you know, like the bad effects of alcohol?
That's very interesting, because globally there's very few governments that are actually up to the mark, you know, in terms of this notion of stopping drug use or just say no to drugs. The reality is, I saw in the paper the other day something about a drug-free Goa. There'll never be a drug-free Goa. Drugs come in all shapes and sizes and types. So it's not just alcohol. Obviously cannabis is popular here. There's a whole range of party drugs, MDMA, there's ATS, amphetamine type stimulants, there's psychedelic drugs. So there's a whole barrage of drugs available. And the thing is that there's a demand for them.
Okay.
So there's a demand for these drugs. It's not going to go away. So to try and stop the problem is very difficult. Or you've got to look at which problem you're actually dealing with. There's a whole range of different drug-related problems and issues that we can deal with. So
if you have to do an assessment between a speedier assessment between Afghanistan and Goa, like Afghanistan will be like narcotics, drugs, and Goa you are stressing on alcohol?
No, I'm stressing on a whole range of different psychoactive substances in Goa, absolutely. The misuse of pharmaceutical drugs, illegal substances like, as I said, ATS, amphetamine type stimulants, a whole range now of designer drugs that are manufactured not only in China but a whole range of other countries now as well, that are not in the statute books. So if a young person is using this particular substance to alter their state of consciousness to get high, then it's not illegal until it's on the statute books. So this is a big issue globally now, that there's new drugs coming on the market all the time. The legal market, except they're not illegal until they're on the statute books. But you couldn't make a comparison between Afghanistan and even India, because Afghanistan now is a country that is facing 95% extreme poverty, virtually no employment for people. Women are kept out of public life totally. There's no growing economy apart from the opium economy. So you can't compare that with India and Goa. But in Goa it's interesting because Goa is known as a party spot. It's known as a place where you can have easy access to alcohol. You can see this. You just have to go up and look at the beaches, or go out in the evening, and you'll see the young people who are probably not drinking alcohol at home, but they're on holiday, away from their parents, away from their peers, having a good time, and some of them getting into trouble with it, of course. But Goa, in order to really tackle the drug problem overall, would need a fairly comprehensive assessment of, you know, what are the drugs being used, where are they being used, how are they coming in, what are the patterns of drug use. Probably different here in the summer and in the monsoon, in the winter and the monsoon. So you'd have to look at that. You would also have to look at who's dealing with the treatment and rehabilitation, and usually it usually starts with NGOs.
They do, yes.
NGOs are the ones that start, but government has to be involved, because NGOs come and go. NGOs are only as good as the funding that they receive. Government's always there. So it's if you're an NGO, it's about finding allies in government, in healthcare, for example, and even the police, in terms of community police, that would actually help to develop a system, really, rather than having a bit here, a bit there, a bit somewhere else.
Like a holistic.
You need a
360
holistic,
Yeah.
comprehensive and coordinated approach. So I think the coordination is the important thing. You really need a coordinated approach in order to effectively tackle drug problem. And then you have to remember that, I mean, even countries like the UK, the US, still have serious drug problems. With all the funding and expertise and information and knowledge that they've got available. So here's Goa. So it's not going to be able to meet the problem without a more systematic approach.
Right. So again, about Goa, and mostly I want to hear, you've been coming to Goa for such a, like, almost for 2 decades now, and if you can tell us a few changes that you have seen.
A few changes in Goa.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know it's a long list, give me 5.
A bridge that needs repaired a few years after it's been built.
Right.
That would be one very important change. No other comment on that. But also just the sheer amount of development and building that doesn't seem to be systematic or structured.
Okay.
So it's just building here, building there, building somewhere else. And you wonder if at some point Goa will become overloaded. Because you're talking, Goa's in a country of 1.4 billion people.
True.
So all you need is 1 to 2% of the population who have an increase in salary in a year, have disposable income, want to go on holiday. Well, some of them might go to Rajasthan or somewhere else, but quite a lot of them want to come to Goa.
True.
In a way, so that you can see that Goa will get to a point where you won't be able to drive on the roads because it will just be a gridlock.
Got it.
And just the sheer amount of people, the water issue, the waste and sewerage issue are all issues that when you certainly read the newspapers, not just the Herald,
Yes.
you get an idea of the vast range of issues facing the Goan government and the Goan people. It's not just the government, it's the people. So the long term, I wonder what Goa will be like in 5 to 10 years' time.
Okay.
You know, because the rate of development, and there, of course, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with development, and it's interesting because part of the reason that you have development in Goa is because India's economy is on the up. Whereas if you come to the UK now, you find there's not a lot of building going on, not a lot of that type of development work. So that's a big change. And then there's this thing that happened this week where they close 167 beach shacks.
Yes.
And they want to attract tourists. How do you attract tourists when you close 167 beach shacks, most of which have not reopened? So I think perhaps that could have been done in stages, or perhaps it could have been done in a more systematic way than just a bang. You know, well, let's close them all. And what they're doing it for a good reason, because it's to do with pollution certificates, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm all in favour of that. But you do have to wonder about pollution here. The other issue here, when you're a foreigner coming here, especially from the West, is the amount of rubbish just lying everywhere, at the side of roads, at the side of gullies. People just throw stuff away, and it's like people don't have respect for the land or respect for their community. That everything just gets chucked, and we're never quite sure why it's not collected. It wouldn't seem such a big task to arrange some mode of collecting this rubbish.
I'm sure there are people and there are municipal councils who are doing that, but maybe in a not as hygienic and structured as in the West. You know? I don't know. Like, I'm sure people who are hearing this also will put a pressure on the government.
Well, you could take me and I could take you to roads that are lined with blue plastic bags, bottles, cans, and bags that are sealed. Who knows what's in them? Just lying there, and it's a health hazard as well. It's not just unsightly, and I think if you want to attract tourists to Goa, it's not, and it's not just Goa. It's a few other states as well. Although it's quite interesting. We were just in Kerala, down in Kochi, and there's not a lot of rubbish you see lying in the streets in Kochi, which is not true here, of course.
Okay. So I think we are coming to the end of the show. One last question about your writing. That you have been you are not a writer, you said, and you have written articles, published papers, but you've been working mostly. And any advice you would like to give to the writers from your experience now that you're
the writer? Well, the advice to writers is just keep on writing.
Yeah.
That's all you can do, and then you have to just write it, review it, edit it, write it again, review, edit it. It's a process.
Yeah,
you just
and how do you keep motivated to write?
Well, at the moment, it's difficult for me. I'm not that motivated at the moment. I've got an idea for another book, but actually beginning to put it down on paper is a bit more problematic, shall we say. Because there's other things that take your attention. There's other things you want to do. I think to be a writer, and we're not talking about writing reports or things like that.
True.
Or we're talking about actually writing, and you should know, as a journalist, you have to discipline yourself to take that time to write. And I think the thing about writing a book, whether it's a novel or a factual book or anything else, you basically need to do it every day. It's like there was an old writer that I met once in Scotland, and he had a set routine. He got up in the morning, had his breakfast, he wrote for 2 hours, he went to the pub, had a pint of beer with his friends and something to eat, went home, wrote for another 2 hours, stopped, then he went for a walk, had a cup of tea. He did that 6 days a week.
Wow.
And was very prolific.
Yeah.
So it's that discipline to do it. But there's a lot of people writing now.
Yes.
If you look at new novels coming out, in India especially, I have to say, there's some tremendous new novels coming out in India, absolutely.
Thank you, David, for your time. And
pleasure. Thank you very much.
All the best for your new novel that is going to come up.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Hello, we'll see you next week. Thank you.